Hi everybody and welcome to Go Math. This is chapter 13, lesson 1. Today we are discussing area of quadrilaterals. Our essential question for today is how do you find the area of parallelograms, rhombuses, and trapezoids? Let's get started. So first we're going to be looking at the area of a parallelogram. In a parallelogram, all of the sides run parallel to each other. So for an example, the top and the bottom, they run parallel to each other just like so. Same thing with the sides. Those lines run parallel. If we extended them, they would run parallel to each other as well. Let's talk about our formula to find the area of a parallelogram. So how we find area, we multiply the base times the height. And so in my formula here, I just wrote A equals BH. And remember, anytime you see two variables up against each other, that tells you that it's going to be multiplication. So for my formula, I've got area equals base times height. Okay, super, super important. Highlight it. Write it down. That is going to be so important to know and to memorize from here on out. All right, let's try an example problem. Keeping that formula handy, we're going to be following that formula in order to solve this next problem. So in this problem, we have our height as 7, so I'm just going to go ahead and label that is height, so I'm going to put H there. And on the bottom, my base, I have 14, so I'm going to label that B for base. Writing down my formula, again, remembering I'm dealing with area equals base times height. And now I'm just going to substitute in 14 for my base, and I'm going to substitute in 7 for my height. So I just simply do 14 times 7, and I get 98. Now notice my units or my label here was centimeters. When I'm writing area, it's always going to be in squared form. So in this case, I'm going to have 98 centimeters, so I'm abbreviating that to cm, and then I'm putting my exponent 2. That exponent 2 tells us squared when we're reading it. So I'm reading this answer 98 centimeters squared. And there is my area for my first parallelogram. Let's try a second example. In this example, I have my height as 6 and my base as 8. Again, I'm working with that same formula, area equals base times height. Notice I'm writing that down every single time. Now I just need to substitute in 8 for my base and 6 for my height. 8 times 6 is 48. And this time my units are meters. So I'm going to write meters squared. It's as simple as that, just multiplying the base times the height. Now, there may be certain instances where you have decimal points. That's fine. We're just doing multiplication here. So again, this is area of a parallelogram. Let's move on to our next shape, which is a trapezoid. Here we're dealing with area of a trapezoid. This formula is a little bit more complicated than our standard parallelogram, so let's get it written down. The formula to find the area of a trapezoid is area equals 1/2 times the height. Then we're going to multiply that by the quantity of base 1 plus base 2. And as you can see here in our diagram, we have our height identified, same as always, and base 1 is on the top of our trapezoid, and base 2 is on our bottom of our trapezoid. So let's get this formula written down. Another important one to remember, area of a trapezoid is 1/2 height times the quantity of base 1 plus base 2, and we are using PEMDAS to solve this. Let's go into a try this problem. I'm going to copy down my formula again, just so I have it handy so I can substitute in my numbers. Okay, here I go. I'm going to bring it down over here. Area equals 1/2 times my height, which is 16. Now I'm multiplying a fraction by a whole number. So I'm going to put my whole number over 1, and I'm left with 16 over 2, which gives me the whole number of 8. Okay, so I've solved that part of my formula, and I'm given 8. Now I can move on to step 2. Area equals 8 times the quantity of, that means parentheses, base 1. Remember, base 1 was on the top of my trapezoid, 17 feet, plus base 2, which is the bottom of my trapezoid, 39. Now, thinking back to when we did PEMDAS, I need to take care of what's inside the parentheses first. So I'm going to do 17 plus 39, and I'm left with 56 there. And when I have a number that's right up against the parentheses, that tells me it's multiplication. So now I'm left with area equals 8 times 56. When I multiply that out, I've got area equals 448 feet squared. And there's my answer. Okay, let's try another problem with using our trapezoid formula. So same thing, the first thing that I'm going to do here is I'm going to write down my formula again so it's easy for me to follow. Area equals, whoops, where's my eraser? Area equals 1/2 the height times the quantity of base 1 plus base 2. And now what I'm doing is I'm just substituting in the numbers that I'm given here. So here I go. Area equals 1/2 the height. There's the height at 6. And it's a whole number, so I'm going to put it over 1. Again, I'm just solving the first part of my formula, 1/2 of the height. 6 over 2, when I divide that out, I get 3. So now I have solved part of my formula as 3. Area equals 3 times the quantity of. Now I'm going to take base 1, which is the top of my trapezoid, 10, plus base 2, which is the bottom of my trapezoid. Now I follow my PEMDAS. Take 10 plus 18, and you have 28 times 3. And notice how I'm putting area equals each time. I'm keeping all of my math lined up. When I multiply out 3 times 28, I'm left with 84 feet squared. Another way that you could write 84 feet squared is you could say 84 square feet. And that means the same thing. Often when we're talking about like laying flooring or we're talking about square footage of a house, you'll hear that terminology, square feet instead of feet squared. So either way it works, means the same thing. All right, let's move on to area of a rhombus. Okay, so for area of rhombus, a rhombus, all sides are congruent. That means they're the same. And it can be divided into triangles. See, if you look here, we have triangles. Check it out. So that's something unique about a rhombus. Let's take a look at our formula. The area for a rhombus is area equals 1/2 times diagonal 1 times diagonal 2. So you'll see here that D stands for diagonal in our formula. Over here, we have our little indicators of diagonal 1 and diagonal 2 in our rhombus, and this is important. So let's get those notes taken down as well as our formula. And then we're going to go ahead and do a try this problem. Okay, let's try this rhombus. Again, I'm going to be writing down my formula because I'm using that every time I work on a geometry problem. Again, I have area equals 1/2 times diameter 1 times diameter 2. And I'm just going to go ahead and label these. My 11 inches is my diameter 1, and my 18 inches is diameter 2. So I just kind of have those labels, and I'm remembering those as I go. All right, let's start with my area equals 1/2, and I'm going to use parentheses to show multiplication here. So I've got 1/2 times diameter 1, which is 11, times diameter 2, which is 18, okay, then I'm going to take area equals 1/2 times 11 first, and I'm going to put 11 over 1, and that's just taking care of my first multiplication problem. I'm left with 11 over 2, which when I divide that out, I don't get a whole number. Instead, I get a decimal, which is totally fine because we're used to working with decimals, and that gives me 5.5, so I'm going to use a decimal 5.5. So now I'm left with area equals 5.5 times 18. And when I go ahead and multiply out my 5.5 times 18, I get 99. So my area equals 99. Now I need to go back up and look at my labels. Well, my labels are inches. So I'm going to say 99 inches squared. And there is my answer for the rhombus. I could have also said 99 square inches. That means the same thing. So either way you write it, it means the same thing. Let's try another practice rhombus, and that will be it for the day. Here is our last practice rhombus problem. We're going to start by writing our formula as usual. Area equals 1/2 of diagonal 1 times diagonal 2. And I'm going to go ahead and label my diagonals, diagonal 1 and diagonal 2 there. All right, here I go, continuing on with my problem. Area equals 1/2 times diagonal 1, which is 15, times diagonal 2, which is 24. Next step, 1/2 times 15. And I'm actually just going to put my 15 over 1 right away. And again, I'm left with a decimal at 7.5 or 7.5. That's okay though. I've solved the first part of my problem. So I'm left with 7.5 times diagonal 2, which was 24. When I multiply that out, I get area equals 180. Looking for my label was inches, and I'm going to square it. So area equals 180 inches squared, or 180 squared inches. All right, thanks for watching. This was Go Math 13.1 Area of Quadrilaterals. Thanks for watching.